Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to use some old supplies and see if they really deserve a space in my stash. And mainly what I'm going to look at today are these Scenic stencils. They're basically a stencil of a scene, and you know, I've had them in my stash for years and I haven't really used them all that much, so I'm going to play with them, try a bunch of different techniques and see if they deserve to stay or if they should go. So the first thing I'm going to do is use one of these backgrounds that are kind of like a silhouette style. This I could see myself using quite a bit. So I just have that page in my sketchbook that I was just kind of cleaning my gouache brush off with, and I liked the way it looked, but it needed something. So I thought I would try some acrylic paint and just try stenciling on this. Now I'm going to use a big chalk paint brush for this. I could not find my regular stiff stencil brushes, and the makeup wedges I usually stencil with have been sold out, or maybe they're no longer stocking them at Dollar Tree, I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm just going to use a big stencil brush for this. There's plenty of space to hold this down with my hands, so I'm not going to bother taping it. And the thing you want to keep in mind when you're going to use a stencil brush and acrylic paint is to just get paint on the ends of the bristles, blot off any excess, and then just pounce up and down. You don't want to brush, you don't want to rub, or that will go under the stencil and then you're not going to get a really crisp impression. I'm going to keep this stuff in this video real time so you can see exactly how long it takes and how it should go. I hope it's not too boring, but I only had about a half an hour, not even a half an hour of footage anyway, so I figured we could keep it real time. The nice thing about a big brush like this is that it is really quick to fill an image as long as you're doing it all in one color. If you need to spot color things, you'll definitely want smaller brushes. But I thought this design was really strong and would work well over any sort of like gel print background or just kind of wipe your paintbrush off background I might have in an art journal. And now let's take a look. And I think that looks fantastic. Yes, that's a keeper. I'm keeping that stencil for sure. Now we're going to go on to another technique. This time I'm going to use my distress sprays. The reason I'm going to use these is because they're opaque, and I chose a yellow, orange, and red for this. And these sprays are a little finicky. They tend to clog. I probably should take them apart and rinse them out after I use them each time, but who wants to deal with that? This is one of these products I'm not going to rebuy because it's fiddly. I have determined that if it's a spray ink product for me, it's got to be just like a liquid watercolor type of ink, like a stain, because I don't like stuff with particles that get stuck. It's just not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze for me. So this is going to be a use it up and don't rebuy it product. But I do like the way they look. So, you know, for now, I'm going to use them up, you know. Now, this was really puddling. This distress spray was really puddling on my paper. So I decided to take a big stamp and just kind of lay it down on my paper and let it dry that way to leave an impression. So we'll see how that looks in a little while. For this stencil, I decided to tape it down to the paper and use some products that I haven't used in a while. This is it's like a polish. I think it's by Cosmic Shimmer, and it's just this kind of like little pot of paint, and it comes with these sponge tip applicators that are in the lid, which sounds great, sounds super convenient. And I tend to only bring this out if I'm making Christmas cards because I kind of want to be using it on a lot of things at once because it's kind of a pain to clean afterwards. And it's not that it's that big of a deal, but I don't have a sink in my studio, so when I have to clean these sponges, I have to take them upstairs, wash them, let them dry, and then put them away. And if I just want to add an accent to something, I don't want to have to deal with that. So that's kind of the pain point for me in this product. Otherwise, I really like this product. I think it's a lot of fun. I don't know if it really goes with this so much because I'm struggling to get that big sponge to push the product down in between the small openings in this stencil. I think this would have been better on a stencil with a larger opening, but that's what I had chose with it. I thought that this would look really nice. A sparkly pearl paint would look really nice on the black with these little kind of lights peeking through the windows in the building. And again, I'm experimenting because I never really found a great use for these stencils, and I'm just trying to give them one last hurrah before they go in the donation pile. And they were fun. Now I have 3 colors of this polish. I have this gold, which I think is, if you're curious about a product like this, get a basic color like the gold. The glitter colors are more translucent. They don't show up as well on different cardstocks. And I would highly recommend, if you do have products like this is great on embossed cardstock. Just emboss a sheet of black cardstock and rub the colors on. But, you know, maybe get a gold and a silver, see if you like them before you invest in several of these pots. This brand by Cosmic Shimmer has lasted quite well. I do know there's other brands, Inca Gold, I don't know if they still make them or not. I've heard a lot of people say they dry up on you. These haven't dried up on me, and you can add a little bit of water if you need to. And I have actually let the paint dry in the sponges on accident, and I was able to rewash them and have that paint come out. So I don't know if it's kind of like a gouache-like product that's in there, or like a body paint-like product, but you can revive the sponges later if that happens. But it is kind of fiddly because of that. Kind of like the Distress Oxide sprays, the fact that you've got to make sure you wipe down the caps, the nozzles before you put them away. Ideally, rinse them out. It's just, how much work do you want to do when you're in the throes of creativity? And do you want to be stopped when you're creating because you've got a clogged sprayer or you've got a dried up sponge? You know, you've got to know how you create and how good your studio hygiene is, I think, when you're choosing products. So honestly, buying one or two of a new product and not the whole line, and see how you get along with it would be my advice. So you don't end up with a bunch of stuff just sitting in your studio gathering dust, or beautiful products that you don't use because they're a pain in the butt. Like this color here is so pretty. It's actually, this one's pretty on white cardstock, this like hot pink color, because it's got a glitter in it. It doesn't really show up very well on the black cardstock. So I ended up having to blend in some more gold to get everything to look nice and opaque and pretty. And also I noticed that on some of these containers, the consistency of the paint is different. Some are really gooey and I need to blot them off on my underpaper there. And some are really stiff like the gold, and actually I had to add a little water to it. So, you know, every once in a while you got to open up the jars, you got to see, do they need a little maintenance? Do they need to be dried out a bit? Do they need to be had a little water added to them? And, you know, make sure all your supplies are in good working order. And if you find that you have more supplies than you can manage, then you might want to put the brakes on for a bit. You might want to start donating some stuff, look through your stuff, try some of the stuff out, and maybe put a halt on your buying until you've got yourself an equilibrium for the amount of supplies you have to the amount that you can comfortably use. Now here I'm going back in with the gold. Since I know I have to wash the brushes anyway, I'm just going in and blending the gold into those other colors to make them more opaque. I just didn't dip it back in the pot after I did that. And I will have a nice reveal of how this looks, and let me know what you think. I think it looks pretty good, and it is a quick and easy way to get a beautiful stenciled image. Now we're going to use that same stencil. I'm not even going to clean it off because I'm going to use similar colors, and I'm sticking it down to another piece of cardstock. This one's a little glossier just because that's what I happen to have around, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm squeezing out some acrylic paint, and I'm getting out some embossing paste. You can use any sort of sculpting medium you have, any brand. They're all pretty similar. And in fact, if you want to save some money, you can use some a silicone latex, not silicone, latex caulking you would get from a home improvement store. Just I would buy it in the tubes because you're not going to go through that much of it. And I just put a little dollop next to the paint, about equal parts. And I'm going to use a palette knife to mix them up. And I'm going to start with the gold, and then I'll work my way down because they're analogous colors, meaning they're next to each other on the color wheel. So if I then go and mix the yellow, and then I go and mix the orange, and then I go and mix the red. You know, yellow is a component in orange, so it's not going to muddy up my colors. And that way I don't have to do much cleaning. Have you noticed that I don't like to frequently clean my tools and supplies? Isn't that interesting? The things you learn about yourself when you are crafting. And I don't mind organizing. I love organizing. I think it's maybe just the cleaning of like brushes and things like that. That's probably why I watercolor paint more than anything. Just because it's so much easier to keep clean. So since I have the red on my my knife, I'm going to do the red first. I'm going to go dark to light. Things are sliding all over the place there. Now, one thing I realized with this is that if you have a large open space in your stencil, using the stencil paste or embossing paste or sculpting medium, using that scraping technique does not work so well. This works so much better over a stencil with less openings, with smaller openings and fewer openings, because you kind of need that stencil matrix to hold the blade of your palette knife or scraper over, like kind of hover, so you get a nice uniform consistency. And when you have the larger dips, your knife wants to kind of dip in there, and you can see some black cardstock showing through, like where I just swiped it there. It's harder to keep that that consistency there. And also it's nice to scrape the excess off of your stencil into those holes, and you can't really do that when you've got really large openings. So that's something I learned about these stencils and this product anyway, and that's what I wanted to play with these stencils and learn. What's the best use for these? Am I actually going to use them? Should I just get rid of them? And go from there. So you don't want to mix it too much because you run the risk of getting the stencil paste underneath the stencil, and so you're better off to quit once you got it fully covered. So let's take a look at this. And this was actually, I think this was one of my favorite ones. You got to be careful not to smear it. I did scrape into the stencil paste up in the top there, but it didn't really make a difference because it's so grungy looking anyway. But I love the way this looks, and I think this would be a beautiful card background, and the texture will give it a little something special. Whenever I do mixed media crafting and artwork, I love to have some extra papers around just for cleanup and experimentation. So I need to clean the stencil up, and rather than just waste all the paint that's on there or rinse it down the drain, I set my stencil over a piece of book paper, and I'm just going to spray clear water on the stencil and wipe it off. And then that extra acrylic paint and stencil paste or whatever is on the stencil, ink, what have you, is going to go over onto the book page. I may use it, I may not, I may throw it in I'll probably throw it in my stack of random, not quite ready for prime time papers, and then throw it onto a gel print or something like that later. So just kind of think of what you can use for cleanup. Maybe it's old scrapbooking papers that you didn't really like very much. Anything that you can give a new lease on life and not feel precious about, it's great to have. And I just sprayed on some inks just to see what would happen. A lot of times with these, they're just the first layers of gel prints that I might do later on. So keeping a stash like that is really handy. Also, throwing a large piece of paper underneath where you work is wonderful, because then you will have this colorful paper that you might want to use for card making or art journaling or collage or whatever. It's, I find often my underpaper under where my workspace looks prettier than the stuff I'm actually making on purpose. And sometimes, like the paper towels I use to wipe up my stencils, I stretch them out and they look like beautiful fabrics that I can use on cards. So don't throw stuff away. I know I'm telling you to be a hoarder. I apologize. But you'll be surprised at what things just spontaneously look nice after you've been messing around with other supplies. It's like those random things that happen when you're not expecting it. And I think that serendipity is what I absolutely love about art, and what I've kind of forgotten that I loved about card making. Because when I'm using my old stuff, when I'm using my favorites, when I'm just messing around with products, that's where the magic happens. And if you feel like you've been missing the magic lately, maybe look around at the stuff that you used to love, the stuff that would spark joy when you played with it, and get those things out again, even if it means you have to clean them up. Let's take a look at the one we had drying with the distress sprays and the rubber stamp. Oh, I love that texture that's left behind from that. Let's remove the stencil and have a look. It's not fully dry, but we can kind of see what it's going to be like. And we'll set that aside to fully dry. And with that leftover stencil, we'll press some paper onto it and then pull up a print. So just take your stencil up, spritz it with water once you have it off of your background, and press your paper down so you can use it like a stamp. And ooh, I really like the way that looks. That looks like a really cool ink blot or ink block print type thing. So I think that's pretty cool. Then the stamp actually has a lot of distress ink on it. So I'm just going to spray that with some clear water and find a boring page in my art journal and just press it down over a kind of clean your brush off background. I do that a lot when I'm cleaning off my brush. I just put it on a page in my art journal. Please excuse that horrendous videography. Oh my gosh. Sometimes, you can tell that I'm in the groove and I'm just playing because I forget that I'm actually trying to film a video for people. And that looks kind of cool, I think. Now, when that dries, it gets way more mellow, so it's just a little bit of a background. Like I said, you keep that stack of random papers in your art room, and then you can always go and wipe your brush off. You can clean a stencil on it. You can do a gel print on it. And eventually, you're going to have some good, crusty, interesting, grungy background that you can use for a project. Or you can throw it away if you don't like it. I mean, you don't have anything to lose. So play. You bought these supplies to use them, not to make a museum of art materials in your house, right? During today's play session, I have realized that I prefer the scene stencils that are just kind of like a silhouette, because then I can take a gorgeous background print that I've made, like a gel print or a pattern paper or something, and I can just do a silhouette on top. And for this, I'm going to use a scraper, and I'm going to use some more embossing paste, and this is just a glossy black embossing paste that I've had for a while, and I think I bought it on clearance many years ago, and it's probably going to dry up if I don't use it up soon. And I'm just going to spatulate it across my stencil. Now, since it's it has smaller openings, I don't have to worry about my blade kind of dipping into the big holes and scraping up too much material. So that worked out great. I found the technique that fit the stencil, that fit the background. This is what you're looking for. You're looking to find a good fit. If you can't find a good fit for those products in your stash, they're not for you, and you can pass them along guilt-free. And that's what I wanted to learn here. Is this something I'm going to use? Now, granted, stencils don't take up a lot of space, and having a few extra stencils that you never use in your box is not a big deal, except it gets in the way. It gets in the way for you getting to the good stuff. So keep that in mind, even though it doesn't take up a lot of space, not really hurting anything, except if it's hurting your workflow and slowing you down and making you feel bad every time you see this thing that you haven't used. Let it go. You've paid for that mistake once. Don't keep paying for it every time you go into that drawer to get a supply out. So can't wait to see how this looks. And I actually have an idea for this, a card idea for this. So if you want to see the cards I plan on making from some of these projects, some of these stenciled images, let me know in the comments below, and I can do a couple card making videos with some of these. Now, like a lot of my card making videos, a lot of the products I used are no longer around, but you can always look at what you have and see if you can adapt it. I'm sure you can adapt it. Now, this background with the stars I thought looked really fun. I love this kind of copper patina color of the background print that I did, and I thought this would work really great for the Statue of Liberty stencil. And I am going to tape this down because this print was on cardstock and it's very kind of cockled. So I don't want to have any gaps. Can you see how the stencil's laying on there? You see there's like a gap where the paper is bent. I got to make sure I flatten this down or I'm not going to get a good impression. So if you are working with these type of scene stencils where you've got large openings, you got to make sure you got that paper flat or it's going to be a pain. So I do have to use some tape for this. But other than that, it's very easy. I'm just going to scrape the black stencil paste over this again, and we're going to have an image. Now, maybe you did a DIY project and you had some black silicone or caulking or something from a project that you had, or some grout or something like that. Try it in your card making and paper crafting. What's it gonna hurt? What's it gonna hurt? Especially if it's on a card or something you're gonna mail away that's not like in an archival like scrapbook or something. Give it a try. I'm telling you what, a lot of these products are stuff you can make DIY yourself. I use the white paintable latex caulking so much for embossing paste. It works pretty much the same. I think it's about the same thing. And you can get it for 99 cents a tube sometimes at the dollar store. I would recommend getting the latex paintable version versus silicone. But if you have silicone left over from a project and it's just going to dry up in the tube, just use it. See what happens. It's only a piece of paper. The stencil can be wiped off. You're not, making something to go in the Louvre. Maybe eventually, someday it'll go there. But for right now, you're playing and you're experimenting and, have fun with it. And don't let anything be so precious that you can't use it. I think that looks great. Trimmed down. Imagine that on a card. That's going to look fantastic. Or on the cover of a sketchbook. Who knows? And of course, we want to clean off our stencils and maybe get a little extra bang for our buck by using the underpaper for other projects. So I'm scraping off my stencil onto my underpaper. Now, any extra material there, I can scrape back in the jar as long as it hasn't been contaminated with anything else. But I actually kind of like it. I like getting some extra prints on my background paper just because I might want to cut that up and use it for something. Because I don't know about you, but I think that looks kind of cool. I could add some spray ink. I could add some stamping over that. I think it's a neat way to get used to how your materials work, get used to different techniques. Like sometimes scraping products against a stencil can yield, various results. So you need to get used to these materials and how they scrape and how they use and how to avoid getting it under the stencil and all of that. And you're putting the brush miles in, you're getting used to your products, and that's valuable. Even if I throw this paper away when I'm done, it's still valuable that I got those techniques in and I got the practice done. Here's a recap at what we made. Here is the acrylic paint through the stencil version on a mixed media page. Love that. And here we have the distress spray where we put the rubber stamp down onto the wet stencil ink and just let it dry. That gave us a really neat kind of milky print texture that I like. It's scrungy, looks kind of cool. This was the polishes. Remember the Cosmic Shimmer polishes? We just kind of pushed that through the stencil, and that actually has a really sophisticated look. I think it's very pretty. This is my favorite. I really like this one, using the texture paste and the acrylic paint. I love how vibrant it is, how opaque it is. I use the Altenew embossing paste there and my acrylic paints, and I just really like that one. That's definitely going to go in a card. The texture is so scrumptious on this, so definitely would recommend trying that technique, or use paintable acrylic latex caulking if you don't have the stencil paste. That'll work good. And then this is with the black stencil paste. I really like this too because I love those gel prints to begin with, and just putting that just basic black silhouette on top, I think really elevated it, and it's going to be just stunning on its own on a card, maybe with a few embellishments, but I've got an idea for the Eiffel Tower card as well. And these were just the book pages that I used for cleanups, and while I don't feel like they're ready for prime time, I definitely feel like I would maybe do some gel printing on it and play with it more. And of course the underpaper, I think that is so much fun and an extra little bang for the buck. So I hope you enjoyed this play session. Let me know if you'd like to see cards made with these prints, and till next time, use your supplies and happy crafting!